Good morning and hello. Welcome to the day 2 of WITI Digital Summit and Hall of Fame. My name is Sevda Javandide, and along with my friend, Pari Vijay, I am going to be your host today, and we will be guiding you through some amazing session and discussions. So let's get started. Our first session is, excuse me, our first session is appropriately named, You Can Have It All. Please welcome our moderator for this session, Kathy Lomax. Kathy is Vice President of the CIO at First American Title. As an executive with over 25 years of experience in leading financial services and healthcare, she's led a variety of global teams across IT disciplines, including infrastructure, quality management, support, finance, and vendor management. Additionally, Kathy is a member of WITI Global Advisory Board and also serves as a program chair for the Southern California Society of Information Management. Welcome, Kathy, to the stage. Kathy, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to day 2, the kickoff of Love to Be the first part of the day for the WITI 2021 Digital Inclusivity Summit and Hall of Fame. I have the delightful opportunity to be here with Sheila Jordan, whom I've admired for a while. I found out that we were already connected on LinkedIn. She's so great. So in terms of just introducing Sheila, Sheila is the Chief Digital Technology Officer for Honeywell. In this role, she's responsible for driving digital technology transformation across the company. She has broad oversight responsibility for infrastructure, services, as well as the expansion of software development in support of Honeywell's digital initiatives, go-to-market offerings, and the solution needs of its customers. Sheila was recognized as one of the top 100 women in technology by Technology Magazine this year in 2021. So congratulations, Sheila, on that award. Sheila, as a highly successful leader in IT, what are the key challenges you faced as a female that required you to shift your approach?
So hello, everyone, and thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I honestly think that, how I compartmentalize, kind of the job and being a female is you have to make sure that you understand the role that you have a job to do. So when I walk into the Honeywell doors every day, I am the Chief Digital Technology Officer, and I've got lots of responsibilities and lots of accountability and a great team. And oh, by the way, I'm also female. So when I think about that, it's like super important that you prioritize the job and the work, but don't lose your identity in the mix of it. Being in tech, I worked in Silicon Valley for 15 years. And, one is I sought companies that embraced me, who I was, and didn't try and change me, but I felt comfortable and I didn't have to apologize for being a woman, because guess what? You can't hide it. So I love makeup and jewelry and lipstick and shoes and jackets. And so be who you are and don't lose your identity, but also don't dwell on it. I don't sit in a room and count how many women are in the room, and I don't count how many, you can't dwell on it or feel like that you're a victim. If you are a female, and we all are, and you have a really big job or a job, then do your job the best you can, kind of regardless of your gender.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, that's all very valid points. And as we explore the traits of highly influential women in tech, I ran across an article by Tech for Women that described several characteristics that resonated quite a bit with me. Some of the characteristics are aspects such as we build resilience, we create women-centered or women-empowered workspaces. We know how to ignore bad advice. We're assertive, and that could be positive or negative depending on the recipient of the assertiveness. We can set lofty goals, and we tend to balance risk with caution at most times. And the majority of people, I've seen this all over the place, we're optimistic for the most part, right? So that helps build all of those good qualities and getting those women-empowered workspaces and whatnot as well. So as you think about the pivotal experiences that might have these characteristics might have played into, what are your thoughts in terms of how they help support leading change?
Yeah, so one of the things I like to say about change is everything's changing, especially with COVID and even pre-COVID. Like technology is advancing, we're using data more, AI, machine learning, the expectations of the business is changing. They want more from technology. We're no longer a cost function, but we are a function that's delivering real business value to the organization. So the CEO and the CFO are making decisions on, do I invest in technology or do I invest in marketing or do I invest in R&D? I mean, we're one lever that's going to help drive growth for the company, just like the other areas are. So the whole value chain of technology. So as we know it, the value chain of technology is changing, but so is everything else. What I tell my team and my kids is the only thing that's not changing is we have 24 hours a day. That's it. You have 24 hours a day. And you get to decide what you want to do with those 24 hours a day. And I know this, and usually there's way more demand than you have for 24 hours a day. So I don't think people do as much thoughtful prioritization. I don't think companies do as much thoughtful prioritization. I think in general, we still kind of react. We're, this fire drill of the day or this thing that comes up. So what I find to be peaceful for me and in a calming mechanism is really make a conscious effort to prioritize. If I find that there's 10 people in the room, IT people in the room, I don't need to be there. I want to empower my team. I want them to make decisions. I want them to do their job, and continue to give them the environment to do their job. If I look at every Sunday night, I look at my calendar for the next 2 or 3 weeks and I look at it, very specifically and say, I don't need to be at this meeting. I don't need to be at this one. I can do this, and really consciously decide what are the things that you can work on that will really have an impact. I learned from John Chambers at Cisco that activity does not equal results. And I live by that every day. So being busy and having 12 meetings a day and, being the hamster in the wheel isn't the same thing as deciding what things you can work on that will have a massive and significant impact. So really step back and think about that. And don't let your calendar run you. You run your calendar. You get to choose and pick on the things that you want to work on and prioritize those.
That's great advice. I wrote that one down because I struggle with that on a daily basis.
I'll do.
Any thoughts about any of those other characteristics that might be something that?
Well, the other one is resiliency. I mean, being in IT and being in with all this change, you can be doing down one course and something else happens and you've got to pivot. And I suggest to my team, all the time that if we need to change course because we learned something new, no one's fired over that. Like, it's what we're expected to do. Like, if you have to make a different decision because you have more data and more information, then the only thing is call it early and call it fast. And so that we can pivot and go do and, pick up the pieces and reset the program. So resiliency, I think, is super important for business today, not even just IT, it's business. Again, there's so many things. We're in an environment right now that one was COVID, and we still have the effects of that, and we're still dealing through that, the medical aspects of it, and vaccination, and our children and our elderly parents. I mean, all that personal stuff is still here. The second is how you manage through it, and now we're starting to see all the economics and financial effects of COVID, like inflation and supply chain issues. So there's a lot that none of us have kind of ever done before in this kind of magnitude of environment. So resiliency, testing, I do a lot of POCs. I test a lot of things before you scale it. So don't be afraid to be super innovative and take massive risks at a time of uncertainty, but do it in a way that's contained. So if we're wrong, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want, it's just a POC and you can pivot and move on. But I think sometimes in this time of uncertainty, I see so many people dig their heels in and say, I'm just going to hunker down and lock down and put my head down and let this thing go away. Well, I don't think we have the ability or the capability, nor should we let this thing go away. Why not be part of it? And why not continue to drive the things that make an impact and have a difference and learn some great leadership skills through this process.
Yeah, perfect. Totally resonates with me as well. And I think that's one of I see a lot of females being able to be very successful at planning and testing and thinking things out. And so that aligns very well with my experiences as well, Sheila. Next set of questions is really around, your thoughts around building your brand, and how did that help you pivot into being very successful? How did your brand help factor into you being successful?
So I think this is very important. So again, we all work for companies that, you might work with and for with the marketing organization. And we spend a lot of time thinking about the brand of a company. A lot of disciplines in a company think about that. And yet we don't spend a lot of time thinking about our personal brand. So I've actually created a presentation. I'm happy to send that along to anyone that might want it, but it's about building your personal brand. And the one thing about a brand is that it's not the icon. When you see the sign and, the McDonald's or the Golden Arches or whatever, it's not the icon. The icon is a reflection of the brand. The brand is the experience that you have with someone, the culmination of experiences that you have with someone each and every time you interact. So sometimes people think, oh my God, all my energy's on this incredible presentation. I've got to do a great job. And it's a big presentation. It's to the executives of the company, or it's external and there's analysts, or it's a big presentation. But the presentation is one component of your brand. And I'm going to say it again, it's the culmination of your experiences as you work with people across the organization. So building your brand is super important. Like I often think is in this thing is when you leave the room, what do you want the people to say about you? Like what's important to you? So you look at all these different characteristics and all these things that are out there. Like what's part of your DNA? Not that they want to say, but what is so part of your DNA that people will resonate with that, and this is what that you'll be known for. So for me, it's like I built a career in taking really complicated, complex business problems and solve them vis-a-vis technology. In fact, when someone says you can't do it, it kind of motivates me to figure out a solution. You can't do it. So that's one. Second is I'm really about people. Like I care about the people. I think I'm responsible for our employees. I want to create an environment that they can flourish and grow and learn and just get better. So I have a real passion for that. And the third thing is I actually have a real passion around communication. I think sometimes IT people or technologists are so smart and they get their heads down and they're doing all this great work, but they forget to connect and they forget to communicate what they're working on. So having worked at Disney early in my career and I supported the marketing organization, I learned a lot about communication. And it's super important that you spend time to build relationships, that you communicate what you're working on. You let people know about some accomplishments. You have a real responsibility to make sure that people are aware of what you're working on. One, to keep testing, am I working on the right stuff? But two, it's not a bad thing to tell people, don't be obnoxious about it, but let your boss know once a month, here's all the things we've done, here's all the accomplishments, here's what we're working on, so that everyone, people are aware of that. So I think it's really, what I do is I love Christmas and I'm obsessed with this time of year. I love it, love it, love it. But I don't like New Year's the way we traditionally spell New Year's. So I use New Year's as a time to do all this deep reflection and what was good this year, what was bad, what's a do-over, what can I do better, what do I need to adjust in my style and my brand and my my leadership skills. So find a time in the course of the year that you do this kind of reflection and then build your plan around your brand. And again, I have some content if that would help someone after the session, we can send it out.
That'd be great. You mentioned that in your book, and I kind of wanted to pivot to your book because it was fascinating when I was reading it just a couple of weeks ago. We've all heard about work-life balance, and the book entitled "You Are Not Ruining Your Kids." It's a positive perspective on the working mother, which I think would be great advice for not only females as well as males, moms and dads. But you talk a little bit about how you don't think that work-life balance is a real successful winning formula, right? It's in the way you integrate work and your personal life. And I love the experiences that you wrote about, including the looks you get when you bring in store-bought cookies to the elementary school. Been there, done that. And everybody else, it seems like, brings in these home baked goods and whatnot, and you just feel like your name is mud, so to speak, in front of all the other parents. I've experienced that as well, and I admire also the discipline that you talked about in how you integrated work life in terms of just how you worked with your kids to make sure that you were working together in terms of chores and those types of things, but you had very committed, dedicated family time that you really fostered, whether it was in the evenings at specific times of the day or on your vacations. Sometimes it's hard for us to break apart, and especially when you're in an infrastructure role, well, things can always go down, or vendors like the AWS outage yesterday, whatever. You can't always do that, but you really make a forceful attempt at being committed to that quality time, and that's really great. You also had fostered a lot of alignment to, earning things and earn your cell phone. And if you're out of school for college, get an internship or get a job during the summer. Those are values that parents can instill in their kids for the rest of their lives, right? And you've had your children demonstrating that, Spencer and Jacqueline, throughout their adult lives. So I think that's some good advice for all of us. And to many women, I think managing a personal life along with a career can be very daunting, especially as you mentioned, times of change with COVID and whatnot. I don't know how a lot of people are ensuring that their kids are going to school and getting the education. And while we're in a back room with a video camera on doing work, right? That's got to be very difficult for women today. What are your key takeaways that you would recommend to others as to how to leverage the strengths of being female and then truly integrating personal and professional aspects of your life?
So thank you for all that. So yes, you mentioned a lot of things, but I would say why I don't like the notion or the statement of work-life balance is because balance implies a scale, and balance implies that it's always equal. And I would tell you that when I learned, after having my kids now are 28 and 26, but when I first had them, there are some days it's all about the kids, and there are some days it's all about work, and that's okay. So the grand thing is like overly balanced, but you can't expect balance every single day. You got to take, and I think sometimes we're our worst critics, and we're the ones that provide all this guilt. So the rationale of writing the book is I decided to do this after they had gone to college, and they were pretty self-sufficient, and they were doing a lot of things, and a lot of things that we did as a family. I wasn't teaching, we just were part of our DNA. I could see them using in college with their friends, and I thought, God, I really didn't ruin my kids. Hence the name of the book. So, but I will tell you, as though we put a lot of guilt on ourselves. And so when I go back to this whole notion of prioritization, to me, since I worked all day, and the days are pretty intense, that nighttime was their time. Like, I didn't really care what happened. Like, I had to prioritize the quality. Someone told me early on that quality versus quantity. So when you were with the kids, I was with the kids. And this whole notion today, like, I am very social. I'm out there at all the technologies. I live on my phone, but there's times to put it down, and you got to give the focus and the respect to your kids and put the other stuff away. You got to put it away and compartmentalize it to a degree, and your focus becomes on the kids. So that's why I came up with, or decided, that work-life integration is so important. Both my kids are student athletes. So occasionally I could sneak out of work at 3:00, be connected with my phone, and go watch their game. And I didn't feel bad about that. Like, this is life. And this is where I knew I'd make it up at 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. or when those network outages go down or whatever. But being able to really manage the things that were important, that I was important, that I had to be there or should be there, want to be there, you got to kind of manage that and work those out. So I just feel it's super important that presence really matters, like being present. And I think today, like, I really worry about all of us. We get so attached, and someone's having a conversation with you, and then all of a sudden they look at their phone. I mean, how rude is that? Like, I personally, when you're having a conversation with them and you're in depth and they pull out their phone, it's just, and I suggest to my children as well, it's like, it's kind of rude. It's like, we're having a conversation, you're telling me that what we're talking about isn't as important as what's on your phone. So we instituted when they were little, because the phones were coming in and the technology is coming in, that be with the person you're with. Like, it's really exciting and great to know it's on your phone, but you got to be present. You got to be available, mentally present. At dinner, we used to put all of our phones, including mom and dad, would put the phones in the middle of the table, and we would have a conversation at dinner. Now, I wasn't able to do that every single night, but the majority of the time when we sat down to dinner, that was quality time, phones go in the middle of the table, and we're going to have a conversation and talk. So it's those things, like you mentioned too, vacations are sacred. I can't tell you how important vacations are, especially at every age group of the kids. When they're little was one thing, you can play, but as they get older and teenage years, and we're all busy and moving, and school and work and sports and my work, and yet vacations, we rebonded. I always took time to take vacations. never did I miss a vacation any year in any job. You get to really reconnect with your family, and you can do staycations. I'm just saying, check out of work. I'm unavailable. I can't be here. I'm gone. The company survived. No, it still goes on without you, and you really rebond and reconnect. And there's really critical times during the kids' lives and during family that you need to reconnect. So I really, really feel passionate about vacations.
I think that's wonderful advice. So as we're nearing the last 10 minutes of our session, what is the one thing that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
So I kind of go back to this notion of prioritization. Like when I was little, when you're trying to do everything, I do think we're our worst critics, especially working moms. We're our worst critics. We expect to, have our nails and hair and look beautiful. We want the house clean. The kids are clean. The kids are all got all their stuff taken care of. All of our chores are done. And I just learned early that you got to give up something. We're our worst critic. And so I learned, like, for me, it was like, if the laundry got done, but if I didn't get it folded and it sat in a basket, the clothes were clean, go get it. Or if one room got super, hectic and crazy and busy, I'd clean it, a week or two from now. I mean, you've got to feel good about whatever priorities you set, whether that's you want to exercise and you're going to be focused on that and you take an hour out every day so you personally can exercise. Just whatever you decide the priorities are, you've got to let the other stuff go. You got to be clear about that. And all of a sudden, if you change and the priorities are something different, you got to keep prioritizing and letting other things go. Because I do think we do it to ourselves where we have to make sure that we're perfect or Wonder Woman at everything. And it is that amount of stress and expectation, it just isn't healthy.
Yeah, completely agree. It kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about the whole priority aspect. So if, opening it up for questions, if you would like to post a question for Sheila, you can put it in the chat session and we'll go from here in the next 8 minutes that we've got. Feel free to post it in the chat.
The other thing, while someone's coming up with some questions, I do think it's important to have a little fun. Like, we have these Honeywell behaviors, which are fantastic, and they run the company, and it's about act with urgency and be bold and break glass, and the behaviors are fantastic. But I don't know, I think especially with COVID and all the other emotional stress that might be occurring in your life, I think as leaders we need to recognize that almost everyone has something going on in their lives that's different and not new. But I just think, having a little fun, being a little lighthearted, stopping and pausing and just saying thank you to people for the work that they're working on. I just think sometimes business and companies can get way too intense. And to me, the financial numbers, the revenue, the expenses, the cost cutting, all the things they're doing are all done by people, and people want to feel valued. And so taking the time to do that is super important.
And they want to hear, they want to be heard too, right?
Yes.
Great. Any questions that people want to ask Sheila? Please post in the chat. Sheila it's a prime opportunity to ask whatever you have. We've got her sort of on the spot. Okay, so first question. Oops, now they're all coming in. Great. Sorry, let me go back up. So what would you say to a young woman trying to prove herself and do good work, maybe climb the ladder, but also properly integrating work and personal?
So one is, I'll just be truthful. There hasn't been a promotion that I got in my entire career that I didn't ask for. So one being and I'm not saying obnoxious, but what I mean by that is my boss knew there was nothing wrong, and don't apologize for being ambitious. Ambitious is a very positive characteristic. So you explaining to your boss what you'd like to do and where you want to be, and you'd like to be considered for this next promotion, you should make sure that's very, very, very clear to your boss. Your boss should know that, because they're in meetings you're not. And if all of a sudden we know Sally wants to move to India, and that's an opportunity opens in India, and we can connect those two things, it actually is very helpful. So being very clear about what your aspirations are. The second is understanding what skills you want to learn. Your job and promotion is one thing, but you also can continue to grow your skills and talents without the promotion. So what skills and attributes do you want to get better at? In fact, a funny story is when I first started at Cisco, I was a terrible speaker. And I got to Cisco and it was like lights, camera, action, on stage, no notes, walk around. It felt like in some levels the theater. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad. I'm terrified. So I knew in that role, I had to get good at public speaking. So I think it's in the book, but I took all my kids. I used my kids for a while. They have 5th and 7th grade. Like, okay, we got homework. They ran to go do homework after the 4th or 5th time. So then I set up, in the spare room, this room that I still had boxes, I used all their teddy bears and dolls and toys, and I made a fake stage. And I would go in there every night for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and go practice speaking. And it was interesting because now I love audiences that are super interactive and like give me naughty. And this is why I don't really like video, because I can't see any of you. And I get really excited about seeing you and shaking heads and smiling. But the dolls didn't smile or not. So I got used to presenting to a very stoic audience. And so that helped me over time. But anyway, the point of that story is find what talents and gaps you want to improve and ask areas either at work or in your other life where you can build those skills and talents. Go become the treasurer of your church if you want to learn budgeting. So there's all sorts of ways to build your talents and skills.
That's great. One other question is, any suggestions that you can offer in terms of keeping the teams motivated, especially during tough times like, last year and a half with COVID and whatnot?
Yeah, I think one is you got to know the team. You got to know what they're working on. People love it more than anything else when you run into someone in the corridor, back to your brand, this culmination of interactions, running into someone on the way to lunch and say, hey, Fred, that's fantastic. I'm so excited you're working on this kind of thing. So really understanding and connecting with them and knowing what they're working on it goes a long way. I mean, think about how you felt when you saw the senior leader and come over and they knew what you're working on. I mean, that's super motivational. So that's one. Walking around, so saying hello and making sure they're checking in and shaking hands, I think is also super important. I also think it's important to, celebrate the accomplishments and recognize the accomplishments, but also leave it open. Like I'll just say a couple weeks ago, my teams were saying, listen, there's so many demands coming at this one group at this time because of a whole bunch of reasons. And they were like, help, we're drowning. So listening to that and reprioritizing their work and take stuff off their table. So all of that really means is that you're connected enough with your team, you're understanding what's happening, you're part of creating an environment that can make them flourish and grow. So you got to listen and you got to also keep reprioritizing for them.
Yep, that's great. I know we have only 2 minutes left, but one last question is, describe a failure and how you were able to recover, if that can fit into 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, there's so many. So one is, I would say to the ones in the audience, if you don't fail at something, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And I know we say that and it's a cliche, but I really, really, really mean that. I can't tell you how many mistakes I made. The most important thing is that you recognize it and you change. You're going to learn about that mistake, and you're going to alter. And I'll tell you the funny story. New in management, I'm driving down. I was a new manager, maybe a director. And this person said, I had a coach, and she was saying, Sheila, your team's telling you things, but you're not really listening. And so she gave me this visual that says you're driving a van and there's 10 people in the van, and you literally are saying, and everyone's talking and contributing and having a conversation. And you say, there's a fork in the road. Do I go right or left? And you open that question up to the team, all the while your directional signal was on the left. So they see that. So like you really weren't listening. You kind of already in your head made decisions. And therefore, when you had they felt it was just kind of not real and authentic. And that was such a visual for me 20 years ago that it's like, oh my goodness, it was such a big learning. And I had to adjust my leadership schedule for that. But the one thing I would say is if you're not failing, and I even hate that word, but what's a failure? I mean, to me, a failure is an experience that you've learned something from. So I think if you do something and it doesn't result in what you expected to do, then learn from that. And the biggest part is if you've disappointed a business partner or disappointed a colleague, the recovery matters. So when you made a mistake, you own it, you stand tall, you say, I messed this one up. Here's why, here's what I'm going to learn from it. What I think some people do is they shy away and they think it's going to go away. And no, it doesn't. So owning a mistake, standing tall, owning the mistake for my team, giving them air cover. Look, it's my fault. You want to yell at somebody, yell at me. And then what happens is you end up building a better, if you recover well, you build a stronger relationship with that person than if the incident didn't happen to begin with. So make sure you understand recovery, you really own recovery. And usually those relationships, no one's perfect, so those relationships just get stronger.
Well, great. We are out of time. Really appreciate you, Sheila, spending the time with us. Thank you for your words of wisdom and your thoughts. And thank you all for joining the kickoff for day 2 of the WITI Summit.
Thank you all so much. I'm so glad there's women in technology. It's a great career. Best of luck. And hopefully I'll run into you at some point live soon.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Kathy. It was inspiring. Good morning, everybody.